Biosergen is a biopharmaceutical company that is developing a new compound to be used in what we call as invasive fungal infections with high mortality and morbidity. And this is what we have been doing over the last years. The story behind Biosergen is that quite some years ago, we had some excellent researchers at the Technical University in Trondheim who actually did some gene manipulation of an old product and actually made a new version of that one with genetic modification. That was something that they fermented, they produced it, they tested it, and did that with more than 25 different compounds. And finally, we decided to take BSG005 out of that whole range of products and put that into development. And this is what we have been dealing with over the last years since we have had products available. So that's where we are right now in clinical testing phase. So that's exciting. Yeah, the business model that we are following is slightly different from many others. We are trying to have a very limited internal team of people with great expertise within each area, and then we outsource everything. So we are basically a virtual company that works with suppliers and labs all over the world in order to actually get this working. And it's a nice model. I like it. It's very efficient, and it also means that our cash flow is not going to any of these big houses and big number of people and so on. It's a very efficient way of doing it. I like it. I have basically a couple of informations here. One is that we have our basic compound BSG005, and what we're doing is, as I mentioned, we're developing this for use in patients who have an invasive fungal infection. Invasive fungal infections have a lot of, or has a high mortality, and there is a high medical need within this area. And that's what we're focusing on next to the safety of the patients in this one. Then we are also, and this is an infusion product, so we give it as an infusion to patients with these kinds of infections. We also have two other projects still using BSG005, and that is two nano models, nanoparticles, where we build in our BSG005 with the aim to get what we call a long-targeted version, where the majority of the dose infused will stay in the lungs, which is typically the first place where many patients will have their infections. Then we are also doing a oral formulation, and we are trying to develop that. It is not as far advanced as the first nanoparticle version, but it is the idea that this will be something we can use in patients where the initial stages has been overcome of this infection, and they are stable, but they have to continue to be safe and get out of danger. Even patients who are not longer in hospital or have gone home can use this oral formulation. And we also expect that such a formulation could be used in the prophylactic against such infections in the patient groups that we're talking about. And I have to say the patient groups here, that is patients with transplantation of organs, solid organs, or hematological transplantations like bone marrow, or it can be patients in cancer chemotherapy. And the most important thing is they all have reduced immune system function. And that is why they are susceptible to the spores of these fungi. And spores are everywhere. You and I, as normal persons, will have a system that can combat these fungal spores before they get to anything. So that's the difference between us normals, if I can say it like that, and the patients who have a reduced function of their immune system. The BSG-005 is produced in a bacterial strain called Streptomyces norsai. Doesn't matter, but it's a bacterial product, and it's a small molecule that is expressed from these genetic modifications in this bacterial strain. And we take it out from this fermentation that we are using for this, and then we are cleaning it up and we are formulating it, and we can use it as an infusion product. And this is the first one of what we're dealing with. And what we have done so far is that we have tested it in healthy volunteers and done several cohorts of testing with different dose levels. And we are now in the phase where we are going to give multiple doses to such healthy volunteers to assess the safety and the tolerability of the product, and also, of course, study the pharmacokinetics. That means plasma levels in blood, at what time point, and so on. That gives us a very good understanding of how to develop this product. It is well known that amphotericin B has the side effects, but it also has a very clear fungicidal effect. And as BSG is in the same class of drugs, in many ways has the same mode of action on the bacterial cell wall or the fungal cell wall, there is a little doubt about that it probably is fungicidal and will be able to handle these fungal strains. That's at least what our preclinical studies, both in vitro studies and in vivo animal studies, has shown. So it is basically our story that efficacy is more or less given on beforehand. How good it is, we don't know. Our animal data showed a larger potency, higher potency of BSG-005 compared to amphotericin B. And it could mean that we have a much more secure development here with BSG-005. And that means it's less risky, and it's potentially something that is a little bit groundbreaking compared to what is already now on the market. The initial, because I have to say there will also be developments that I cannot really say what would lead up to later on, because we have more developments. But for the first one here, the market for these fungal infections, invasive fungal infections, is about, for the polyene group that we belong to with this product BSG-005, is about 1.6 billion. And that goes for the three product groups that we are in here. That is the polyene macrolide, it's the azoles, and it's the echinocandins. They are all able to treat or be used in the treatment of these invasive fungal infections, but it's basically mainly the polyene macrolide class that is fungicidal. Most of the others are not fungicidal, but only inhibit the growth of the fungus. And that's the major difference between our product and some of the other products. And therefore, we expect to have a reasonable chance of taking the market, particularly because it seems from our healthy volunteer study that we have so far that we are not having some of the adverse events that the other products does show. And that means that particularly we have no impact on the kidney function. So far, we have had no impact on liver enzyme functions. And that is a major step forward for this product compared to the most close competitor, which is another protein called amphotericin B. Amphotericin B alone is selling every year for about $500 million. And if we come out as positive as we hope, point one, we have a better safety. And if we are as effective or more effective than amphotericin B, we will hopefully be able to take a major share of their market, plus from some of the other class drugs as well. So the market looks good for us. And we had in June last year our first getting on First North with our company, and we raised 50 millions at that point in time, and that was mainly to get manufacture and starting of our phase 1 trial in Australia. This is now going, we're working, it's quite advanced, and that means that we need to plan to get into what we call phase 1B and 2 development. That is one of the phases or some of the phases in a drug development program. And we will use the majority on finalizing the phase 1 and establish the phase 1B and 2 studies that we are planning. So that will be the major purpose for this rights issue and the cash that we can raise with this one. We, of course, also need to do more manufacturing, because when you go from phase 1 to phase 2, you need to have a clean product, pure product that is more than what we need to do in phase 1. So there are some developments we need to deal with, but the main thing is to get started on the phase 1B and phase 2 clinical trials. That will be what we are doing. It's basically just following up on what I just said. It means that we will finalize our phase 1, and we expect to do that by the end of the year, and have reports available during the first couple of months in next year, in 2023. The other main goal we have is to get our next trial in patients up and running. And we hope to get that happening in 2023, and hopefully before the end of third quarter, maybe even second quarter. That depends a little bit, but that's what we're looking at. So over the next 12 months, we will have hopefully completed phase 1, started the first patient study, and also have advanced, if not started, our second phase 2 trial. So that's the goal we have for the next 12 months.